Welcome to my YouTube channel, HEARDBREAK Chronicles, a place where you will hear a large number of fascinating and intriguing chronicles about hearts that are completely broken by female betrayal. Let's not drag on for long. Let's get straight to the point. Let me paint you a picture. 3 people sit in front of me. My wife, Madison, my brother, Caleb, and my business partner, Ryan. All of them frozen, staring at me in silence. The air is thick, and their eyes dart nervously around the room. In my hand, I hold the truth, the kind of truth that shatters lives and burns every bridge it touches. I smirk. They didn't see this coming. This, I say calmly, holding up my phone, is going to be fun. Think of it as family therapy. But it won't end the way you're hoping. Madison's eyes widen. Ryan clears his throat, avoiding my gaze. Caleb looks like he's about to bolt, but there's nowhere to run. Not anymore. I've been waiting for this moment, planning every second, every word, every twist, and now it's time. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to the day my perfect life began to crumble right in front of me. The first crack. Hi, my name's James, and until recently, I believed I had it all. A successful business, a beautiful wife, and a family I could trust. Or so I thought. For 6 years, Madison and I built a life together. A life full of laughter, love, and everything you'd expect from a perfect couple. But if there's one thing life teaches you, it's this. The more perfect something seems, the uglier the secrets hidden beneath. The first crack appeared on a random Thursday night. We'd just finished dinner. Nothing special, takeout and a bottle of wine. Madison seemed distracted, her eyes constantly flickering to her phone, as though she were waiting for something, or someone. I brushed it off at first. We'd both been busy lately, stressed from work. Maybe she was just tired. But then her phone lit up with a notification. My eyes instinctively glanced at it. Just one message. You were amazing last night. Can't wait for more. It hit me like a punch to the gut. My pulse spiked. My throat tightened. And for a split second, it felt like the entire world went silent. It wasn't my message. Madison noticed my glance and quickly grabbed her phone, stuffing it into her pocket with a forced laugh. Work stuff, she said, barely meeting my eyes. Nothing exciting. I smiled, pretending to believe her. But inside, something had already snapped. Collecting evidence. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instinct told me to hold back, to watch, to wait. Sometimes it's better to collect your evidence before you strike. That's what I did. The next day, I installed a tracking app on her phone. It wasn't hard. Madison isn't exactly a tech genius. I told myself it was wrong, unethical even. But at that moment, my morals took a back seat to the rising suspicion boiling inside me. Discovery. The results came quickly. First, everything seemed normal. She texted her friends, checked social media, and did everything you'd expect from a woman with nothing to hide. But then, I found it. A hidden message thread with him. Ryan, my business partner, my closest friend, the man I trusted with everything. My business, my secrets, and apparently my wife. The messages were more than incriminating. They were detailed, intimate. They spoke of stolen moments, whispered promises, and secret meetings I never suspected. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, my stomach twisting into knots. I could barely breathe, but I kept reading. And then I found the second thread. This one wasn't with Ryan. It was with Caleb. Yes, my brother. The man who shared my childhood, the one I'd always protected. My blood. The full weight of betrayal. The full weight of the betrayal hit me like a freight train. Madison wasn't just having one affair. She was playing me for a fool with not one but 2 of the people closest to me. I thought my heart couldn't break any more than it already had. But I was wrong. My first instinct was to confront them immediately, to scream and rage until they had no choice but to admit the truth. But then something deep inside me, something cold, calculating, told me to stop. No, don't confront them now. Not yet. If I lashed out, they'd twist the story. They'd make me look crazy. I couldn't let that happen. Not when I had the power to control everything. The plan. I needed to be smarter, to think bigger. So I made a decision. I'll play the long game. Let them think they've won. Let them dig their own graves. For the next few days I watched. I listened. I collected every bit of evidence I could without raising suspicion. Madison had no idea she was being observed. Ryan and Caleb carried on as if nothing had changed. But I was always there, waiting in the shadows, preparing for the perfect moment. They thought I was clueless. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. But they were wrong. Very wrong. There's something terrifying about waiting. The calm before the storm. The silence before everything explodes. That's where I was. Waiting, watching, and planning my next move. I had all the evidence I needed. Texts, locations, dates. Proof that Madison had been meeting Ryan in fancy hotels while I thought she was working late. Proof that Caleb had met her just the day before in some secluded coffee shop. Their secret conversation caught on the app one installed. But confronting them right away would be too easy, too merciful. They thought they were untouchable, that I wouldn't catch on. So I decided to give them exactly what they wanted, a clueless, unsuspecting husband. The first move in my game was subtle. Madison had a routine, coffee every morning at 7:30, a yoga class twice a week, then work meetings in the afternoons. She thought she was clever, but she was predictable. I started showing up unexpectedly, timing my arrivals just right. One morning, I joined her at her favorite coffee shop, catching her completely off guard. "Surprise," I said, kissing her cheek. "Thought I'd spend the morning with my beautiful wife." Her eyes widened for a split second, but she quickly recovered, forcing a smile. "That's sweet, but I have a meeting in a few minutes." "Oh, I know," I said, smiling. "I can wait. I'll even walk you there." The panic in her eyes was subtle, but I saw it. It was the first crack in her perfect act. She made up some excuse, something about a last-minute cancellation, and we ended up going home. But I wasn't done yet. Lunch with Ryan. The next step in my plan was Ryan. I invited him to lunch at our usual spot, playing the role of the oblivious friend. "How's everything going?" I asked casually, watching him closely. "Business good? Life treating you well?" He smiled, but there was tension in his eyes. He knew something was off. "Yeah, everything's great," he said, avoiding my gaze. "You?" "Oh, busy as always," I said, pausing just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "Madison's been working a lot lately too. Meeting with important people, I'm sure." Ryan nearly choked on his drink. "Yeah, she's, been busy, huh?" I leaned back, savoring the moment. The best part of a game like this is watching your opponent squirm, realizing they're losing control but not knowing how to escape. It was only the beginning, the invitation. Later that night, I planted the seeds for what would become the final act. "Hey, Maddie," I said, leaning against the doorway as she scrolled through her phone. "I've been thinking we should have a little family dinner. Just you, me, Caleb, and Ryan. It's been too long since we all hung out." Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "Oh, that's a nice idea," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I think Caleb's busy, and Ryan's been swamped at work." "I already checked," I interrupted with a smile. "They're both free next Saturday." For a split second, I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew exactly what I was planning, even if she couldn't prove it. I kissed her forehead. "It'll be fun, just like old times." The game was in full swing now, and the countdown had officially begun. Countdown to dinner. In the days leading up to the dinner, I played the perfect husband, attentive, loving, and just oblivious enough to keep her guessing. I wanted her to think she still had control, that she could somehow outmaneuver me. But there was no escape. Saturday finally arrived. I set the table myself, making everything perfect. The wine was poured, the candles were lit, and the air was thick with anticipation. The dinner begins. Ryan was the first to arrive, bringing his usual charm and fake smile. "Hey man, smells great in here," he said, clapping me on the back. "Oh, it's going to be a memorable night," I said, barely containing my grin. Caleb showed up a few minutes later, visibly nervous. He tried to hide it, but I knew him too well. And then Madison appeared, her expression calm but her eyes filled with dread. She knew this wasn't just a family dinner. This was something else entirely. We all sat down, exchanging pleasantries, pretending everything was normal. I waited until the main course to make my move. I raised my glass, smiling warmly. "A toast," I said, locking eyes with each of them in turn. "To family, friendship, and honesty." Madison froze. Caleb glanced at Ryan, who shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "The bombshell. Funny thing about secrets," I said, leaning back in my chair. "They always have a way of coming out in the end." The room fell into a suffocating silence. My glass hovered mid-air, and I could feel their eyes on me, wide, nervous, full of questions they didn't dare ask. Ryan cleared his throat first, his usual confidence cracking at the edges. "Secrets? What do you mean by that, James?" "To be continued. Let me know when you're ready for part 3, where James starts to reveal the secrets and puts them all on edge." I smiled, savoring the moment. "Oh, nothing too serious. Just some observations I've made recently." Madison gave a tight laugh, but I saw the panic behind it. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands clenching into fists under the table. They were waiting for me to make the first move, but none of them were ready for what was coming. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence stretch, the weight of it pressing down on them. Then, I pulled out my phone and casually scrolled for a moment before placing it on the table. "You know what's interesting?" I said, locking eyes with Ryan. "Technology. It's amazing what you can find with the right tools. For instance, did you know that tracking apps can tell you exactly where someone's been, down to the minute?" Ryan's face turned pale. Madison's fork slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. "James," she started, her voice barely a whisper. I raised a hand to silence her. "Let me finish, darling. You'll want to hear this part." I tapped on the screen, pretending to look through my phone. "So, imagine my surprise when I discovered that you, Ryan, were at the Westfield Hotel last Thursday. Funny, Madison told me she had a work meeting that same day. Quite the coincidence, wouldn't you say?" The room tensed like a coiled spring ready to snap. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Madison's eyes darted toward him in panic, and Caleb stared at the table, refusing to meet my gaze. "Still nothing to say?" I asked, cocking my head. "No explanation?" The moment of truth. Madison tried to recover. "James, it's not what you think." I laughed softly, cutting her off. "Oh, but it is. Trust me, I've had plenty of time to think about it. To watch. To wait. And here's what I've learned. You've been lying to me for months. But it wasn't just you, was it?" I turned my attention to Caleb, whose face was drenched in sweat. "And you?" I said, my voice dropping to a cold whisper. "My own brother. I expected betrayal from strangers, maybe even acquaintances. But you, Caleb?" I chuckled darkly. "You really took it to a whole new level." Caleb's head snapped up. "James, I can explain." I slammed my hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. "Explain? Oh, I can't wait to hear this one." I stood up, pacing around the table. "Explain how you could betray your own brother. How you could sneak around with my wife while pretending to have my back. Go ahead, Caleb. Enlighten me." Caleb's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no sound came out. He knew there was no explanation that could save him. "I didn't want it to come to this," I said, my voice calm again. "But you left me no choice. You thought you could deceive me, that I wouldn't find out. You were wrong. And now, it's time to face the consequences." Madison's plea. Madison burst into tears, her carefully constructed mask of calm shattering in an instant. "James, please. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I turned to her, my expression cold and unforgiving. "A mistake? Which part was the mistake, Madison? The first time? The second? Or maybe when you decided to involve my own brother?" Her sobs grew louder, but I felt nothing. No pity, no compassion. Just a cold, calculated satisfaction as the truth unraveled in front of them. Ryan speaks. Ryan, who had been silent this entire time, finally spoke. Look, James, I'm sorry. We never meant for it to go this far. I don't even know what to say. I raised my hand again, stopping him. You don't have to say anything, Ryan. You see, this isn't just a confrontation. This is an exposure. Everything you've done, every lie you've told, it's all about to come crashing down. I picked up my phone again and opened a recording. Shall we listen? I asked, my thumb hovering over the play button. Their eyes widened in horror. Wait, Madison cried, reaching for my hand. James, please don't. But it was too late. The recording. I pressed play, and the room filled with the sound of their voices. Whispered confessions, promises, and secrets they thought would stay buried forever. Ryan's jaw clenched, Caleb's face turned ghostly white, and Madison sobbed uncontrollably. I paused the recording after a few seconds, letting the weight of it settle. You wanted to play games, I said, my voice steady and controlled. Well, this is my game, and I always win. The silence after the storm. The room felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Madison's sobs echoed through the silence, while Ryan and Caleb sat frozen, pale as ghosts. No one dared speak first. I let the tension linger, every second weighing down on them like a stone. I leaned against the table, arms crossed, and smiled. Not a warm, friendly smile, but the kind that sends chills down your spine. Well, I said calmly. That was enlightening, wasn't it? Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a finger to silence him. No, Ryan. You've had your chance. You made your choices. Now it's my turn to decide how this ends. Caleb dropped his head into his hands, his voice trembling. James, I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear. It got out of control. Out of control? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. That's how you justify it? You accidentally ended up in bed with my wife, multiple times? And it just slipped your mind to tell me? Come on, Caleb, you're better at lying than that. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Please, don't destroy everything. We're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. You stopped being family the moment you betrayed me. You didn't think about family when you crossed that line, did you? I turned to Madison, whose tear-streaked face only fueled my resolve. And you, the woman I trusted with my life, was it worth it? Were the lies, the sneaking around, the betrayal, was it worth destroying everything we built? Her voice cracked as she spoke. James, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was confused. I never wanted to hurt you. I slammed my hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. Confused? You weren't confused when you were sneaking around behind my back with two people I trusted the most. You weren't confused when you made a mockery of our marriage, cornered with no way out. The weight of my words hit her like a tidal wave, and she collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I let out a slow breath, pacing the room. My heart was pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. This was exactly where I wanted them, cornered, broken, and with no way out. But I wasn't done yet. Here's how this is going to go, I said, my voice calm and deliberate. You're going to confess everything, not just to me but to everyone. Your friends, your family, our business associates. The truth is going to come out, and you're going to own every disgusting detail of it. Ryan's last-ditch effort. Ryan's eyes darted around, desperate for an escape. James, let's be reasonable. We don't need to involve anyone else. This can stay between us. I shook my head slowly. Oh, Ryan, that's where you're wrong. This stopped being between us the moment you decided to betray me. Actions have consequences, and it's time you all face yours. I grabbed a folder from the counter and tossed it onto the table. Inside were printed screenshots, texts, photos, timestamps, everything I had gathered over the past few weeks. Take a good look, I said coldly. This is your legacy. Every lie, every meeting, every dirty little secret. It's all right here. And tomorrow it will be in the hands of the people who matter most. Your bosses, your families, your colleagues. Everyone will know exactly who you are. Ryan snatched the folder and frantically flipped through the pages. His face turned white as he realized there was no escaping it. You wouldn't, Caleb whispered. You wouldn't ruin us like that. I leaned in close, my eyes locking onto his. Oh, I absolutely would. The final bombshell. Madison clutched at my arm, desperation in her voice. James, please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can start over. I pulled away from her grasp, my voice ice cold. You already broke it beyond repair. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then I dropped the final bombshell. I've already emailed copies of this to myself, to a lawyer, and to a few trusted friends. If anything happens to me, this evidence will be released immediately. So don't even think about trying to cover this up or manipulate your way out of it. There's no escape this time. Ryan's shoulders slumped in defeat. Caleb looked like he was about to be sick. Madison buried her face in her hands, trembling. Checkmate. I took one last look at them. These people who had once been my closest allies, now exposed for the liars and betrayers they truly were. Dinner's over, I said, turning toward the door. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, and Madison, don't bother coming home tonight. I walked out, the sound of their stunned silence following me. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. I wasn't sure what would come next, but one thing was certain. This game was over, and I had won. The calm before the real storm. The house felt eerily quiet when I returned the next day. No texts from Madison. No missed calls. Just pure silence. It was the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. The calm before the real storm. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling through my emails. The message I sent to my lawyer sat in my sent folder. Ready for action if anything went wrong. Felt good being in control for once. But that feeling didn't last long. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed. Not a text from Madison. Not a call from Caleb, but an unexpected message from Ryan. We need to talk. Urgent. I stared at it for a few moments, debating whether to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore him, let him stew in his own mess. But curiosity got the better of me. I called him. Ryan answered immediately, his voice low and tense. James, listen, man. Things have gotten out of hand. We need to fix this before it destroys all of us. I smirked. Fix it? Oh, Ryan, you're about 6 months too late for that. Just hear me out, he pleaded. I made a mistake. I admit that. But if this gets out, we'll both lose everything. The business, our reputations, everything we've built together. Our reputations. Funny how that was his biggest concern. Not the fact that he'd been betraying me for months. You should have thought about that before you stabbed me in the back, I said coldly. There's no fixing this. Ryan's tone shifted, desperate, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. You think you've won, but you've underestimated me. I'm not going down without a fight. If you release that evidence, I'll drag you down with me. I know things, James. Things about you. About your business. Things that could ruin you just as easily. The threat hung in the air like a loaded gun. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. Is that a threat? No, he said quickly. It's a reality check. You don't want a war with me. Trust me on that. I ended the call without another word, my mind racing. Ryan was bluffing. Wasn't he? He had no leverage, no secrets worth exposing. But doubt gnawed at me, planting seeds of uncertainty. And that's when I realized this wasn't over. Not yet. The envelope. That night I barely slept. My mind replayed Ryan's words over and over, dissecting every sentence for hidden meanings. The next morning, things got worse. I stepped outside to grab the newspaper and found an envelope on my doorstep. No return address. No name. Just my name scrawled across the front. I opened it carefully, my heart pounding. Inside were photos, grainy but unmistakable. Photos of me, meeting with a former associate. Signing documents that could easily be misinterpreted if someone wanted to paint me in a bad light. Ryan wasn't bluffing. He had something on me. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just trying to protect himself. He was trying to back me into a corner. I clenched the photos in my hand, fury bubbling beneath the surface. Ryan thought he could outmaneuver me, but he was wrong. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to hit back harder than he ever expected, calling in reinforcements. Later that afternoon, I called a private investigator. If Ryan wanted to play dirty, I'd meet him on his level. I needed to know everything, every weakness, every skeleton in his closet. If he had leverage on me, I'd find something worse on him. The investigator promised to dig deep, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I had the upper hand again. An unexpected visitor. But while I waited, something unexpected happened. Madison showed up at the house. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her face pale and exhausted. She stood on the porch, hands trembling as she knocked. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "What do you want?" "I need to talk," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Please." I hesitated, then let her in. She stood in the living room, clutching her coat like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I've lost everything, James," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Ryan's gone. Caleb won't talk to me. My life is in ruins." "You should have thought about that before you destroyed mine," I said coldly. She nodded, wiping her face. "I know. I deserve everything that's happening to me. But Ryan, he's dangerous. He's not going to let this go." "I already figured that out," I said. "What else do you know?" Madison hesitated. "He has connections, powerful ones. If he feels cornered, he'll do whatever it takes to protect himself. You need to be careful." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I had underestimated Ryan once, but I wouldn't make that mistake again. The warning. I walked her to the door, my mind racing. "James," she said softly, pausing before stepping outside. "I know you'll never forgive me, but please, be careful. I don't want you to get hurt." I shut the door without responding, my focus already on what needed to happen next. A declaration of war. Ryan wanted a war? He was about to get one. War. That's what this had become. Ryan wanted to play dirty? Fine. I was ready to meet him on his level, but I wasn't just going to win, I was going to destroy him. The private investigator worked faster than I expected. By the next day, he handed me a thick folder filled with every dirty secret Ryan had tried to keep hidden. Corrupt business deals, offshore accounts, and an affair with a high-ranking client's wife. Ryan thought he had leverage on me, but now I had the nuclear option. The choice was simple: crush him publicly or give him a chance to back down quietly. But after everything he'd done, I was leaning toward the first option. Still, I had to be smart about it. If I pushed too hard, too fast, he'd retaliate. I needed to set the trap perfectly, just like before. A final meeting. That evening, I called Ryan and invited him to meet me in person. "Neutral ground," I said. "We'll settle this face to face. No tricks." He hesitated but eventually agreed. We met at a quiet bar downtown, tucked away from curious eyes. Ryan walked in, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto me. His usual arrogance had returned, but I could see the cracks beneath the surface. He was nervous. I gestured to the seat across from me. "Have a drink. This might be your last chance to relax." He sat down, folding his hands on the table. "Let's cut the small talk. What do you want?" I slid the folder across the table. He opened it, his eyes widening as he flipped through the pages. "You've been busy," he muttered. "You have no idea," I said, leaning in. "Here's how this works. You walk away from the business quietly. No drama, no counterattacks. If you don't, well, this goes public. Every dirty deal, every scandal, every affair. Your career, your reputation, it'll be ashes." Ryan clenched his jaw. "You think you can scare me?" I smirked. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm giving you a way out. One chance. Take it or we both burn." For a moment I thought he'd fight back. His hand tightened into a fist, his eyes flashing with rage. But then something shifted. The fight drained out of him and he slumped back in his chair. "You've always been smarter than me," he said quietly. Fine. You win. I watched him carefully, looking for any sign of deceit, but there was none. Ryan knew he was beaten. I'll have the paperwork drawn up tomorrow, I said, standing. You'll be out of the business by the end of the week. If you're smart, you'll disappear for a while. Ryan nodded, his expression blank. Fair enough. The calm after the storm, or not. As I walked out of the bar, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was done. The war was over and I had won. Ryan was out of my life for good, and I still had the business intact. But just when I thought it was over, things took one final turn. The next morning, I received a message from Caleb. We need to talk. Urgent. I almost ignored it, but something about his tone made me pause. Against my better judgment, I called him. James, he said, his voice shaking. Ryan's gone. What do you mean, gone? He left town last night, but before he did, he told me something. Something you need to know. My heart skipped a beat. What? It's Madison, Caleb said, his voice cracking. She's been playing all of us. The whole thing. It was her plan from the start. I froze, the ground shifting beneath me. What the hell are you talking about? She manipulated both of us, Caleb continued. Me, Ryan, even you. She's been playing this game longer than you know. Ryan figured it out right before he left. He didn't have time to explain everything, but he said you needed to watch your back. She's dangerous. I hung up without another word, my mind racing. Could it be true? Was Madison the real mastermind behind everything? The realization. Suddenly, the pieces started to fit. The subtle manipulations, the perfectly timed lies, the way she always seemed one step ahead. I looked around the empty house, my pulse pounding in my ears. For the first time in weeks, I felt real fear. And then, I heard the door open behind me. James, Madison's voice called softly. We need to talk. I turned slowly, my blood running cold. Her smile was calm. Too calm. We've come so far, haven't we? She said, stepping closer. But the game's not over yet. Thank you very much for listening to this story to the end. I hope you liked. We work for you, looking for and telling you the most effective stories about women's betrayal, shocking intrigue, interweaving the plot and unexpected reactions of angry men. Save us, put likes, write comments, and, of course, subscribe to the channel to not miss any story.